Hello and welcome to the lesson. The subject is company law. Today we are going to answer question number 3 from the April 2022 sitting that was done by certified public accountants and certified secretaries. Part 3 has 4 parts, A, B, C, and D. Part A says, summarize 6 grounds for disqualification of directors, 6 marks. B, explain 4 grounds for disqualification from being registered as a company secretary, 4 marks. C, outline 5 rights of auditors under the Companies Act which relate to company meetings, 5 marks. D, explain 5 circumstances under which a company might decide to undergo a corporate restructuring, 5 marks. Company law, April 2022, question 3. Part A of this question. Grounds for disqualification of directors. What are the grounds for disqualification of directors? The first ground is conviction of an offense. Conviction of an offense. Conviction of an offense. If a director is convicted of an offense, then that is sufficient ground for his or her disqualification. Another ground is breach of duty, fraud, and breach of duty, or breach of duty is another ground for disqualification of a director. That is disqualification for fraud or breach of duty committed while the company is in liquidation or under administration. Number 3, we are outlining the grounds for disqualification. The third one is if he or she becomes of unsound mind. If a director loses his or her mind, then such a director ought to be disqualified. Because for you to function effectively as a director, you need to have a sound mind. But if a director loses his or her mind, then that will be ground sufficient for disqualification. Absence. Absence from duty. Absence. Now, if a director is absent without permission for a long period of time, say 6 months or 7 months, and if a director is also not present when meetings are called, the meetings of directors that are held within that period, then that director should be disqualified from his duties. Absence. If he or she is absent without permission. Absence without permission. A director may also be disqualified if he or she resigns, resignation. If a director resigns his office by notice in writing to the company, then that will be sufficient ground for his disqualification. Then number 5, if he is undischarged bankrupt. If a director is declared bankrupt by a court of law, then such a director should also be disqualified from his station or from operating or functioning or carrying out his duties as a director. Okay? So these are 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are 6 grounds for disqualification of a director. A director may also be disqualified, I can say, on conviction of offense involving failure to lodge returns or other documents with the registrar. If a director fails to lodge returns or other documents to the registrar, then that can lead to his disqualification. 6 points, 6 marks. Now let's answer part B of this question. Explain 4 grounds for disqualification from being registered as a company secretary. B, grounds for disqualification secretary. What are the grounds for disqualification from being registered as a company secretary? As a company secretary. The first ground is that one related to conviction. If convicted by a court of competent jurisdiction in Kenya or elsewhere involving fraud or dishonesty, then that is a ground sufficient for disqualification from being registered as a company secretary. Conviction by a court of law, competent court of law. 1, I've said conviction by a competent court of law. Conviction by competent court of law in Kenya or elsewhere involving fraud or dishonesty. That is sufficient ground for disqualification from being registered as a company secretary. Next is undischarged bankrupt. Undischarged bankrupt. Another ground is that one in relation to unsound mind. If he or she is unsound mind and has been certified to be so by a medical practitioner. Unsound mind. And that means that the mind of the company secretary has to be certified by a medical practitioner to be unsound. That will be sufficient ground for disqualification from being registered as a company secretary. Then lastly, we can say that a company secretary can be disqualified from being registered if the registration board determines that he or she shall not be registered. For example, if a person is guilty of professional misconduct, guilty of professional misconduct. A certified secretary is a professional who is expected to adhere to the code, the professional code of ethics. So if the company secretary is guilty of misconduct, guilty of professional misconduct, then such a secretary can be disqualified from being registered as a company secretary. So these are 4 grounds, 4 marks. Part C, outline 5 rights of auditors under the Companies Act which relate to company meetings, 5 marks. Rights of auditors under the Companies Act which relate to companies meetings. The first right is that a company auditor is entitled to receive all communications, okay, relating to any written resolution proposed to be agreed by the company. So a company auditor has a right to receive communications. A company auditor has a right to receive all communications relating to any written resolution proposed or to be agreed by the company, because we know that resolutions are held through meetings. So an auditor has a right to receive all communications. All communications. All communications. That's the first right. The next right is that this auditor, company auditor, has a right, or you can say is entitled to all notices. Entitled to all notices. A company auditor is entitled to all notices and other communications relating to the general meetings which is a member of, which other members of the company are entitled to receive. Is entitled to all notices of and also other communication relating to any general meeting which a member of the company is entitled to receive. So any notices that a member is entitled to receive, any communication that a member is entitled to receive, then an auditor is likewise entitled to receive such notices, such communications of the company. The third right of auditors under the Companies Act which relate to company meetings is that the auditor has a right to attend any general meeting of the company. Right to attend any general meeting of the company. Has a right to attend any general meeting of the company. Another right relating to meetings is that an auditor has a right to be heard. He has a right to be heard at any general meeting. To be heard at any general meeting. Right to be heard means he has a right to speak, because he cannot be heard without speaking. So he has a right to do what? To be heard at any general meeting that the auditor attends. And he has a right to be heard in relation to any business of the meeting in his or her capacity as the auditor. So these are rights, outline 5 rights. We can also say that an auditor has a right Now, if the auditor is a firm, the right to attend or be heard at a meeting is exercised by a natural person authorized by the firm in writing to act as its representative at the meeting. So these are rights of auditors under the Act which relate to company meetings. Part D. Part D, explain 5 circumstances under which a company might decide to undergo corporate restructuring. Circumstances under which a company might decide to undergo corporate restructuring. What is corporate restructuring? Corporate restructuring. Corporate restructuring is defined as the process involved in changing the organization of a business. And it can involve making dramatic changes to a business by cutting out or merging departments. It may also involve or imply rearranging the business for increased efficiency and profitability. In other words, it is a comprehensive process by which a company can consolidate its business operations and strengthen its position for achieving corporate objectives or synergies and continuing as competitive and successful entity. So that is corporate restructuring. The question is, what are the circumstances under which a company might decide to undergo corporate restructuring? Now, a company may decide to undergo corporate restructuring, number one, in order to focus on core strengths. One, to focus on core strengths. I've just said corporate restructuring may involve dramatic changes to business by cutting out or merging departments. So there are some departments that the company can decide to do away with in order to focus on core strengths, in order to focus on the core business, in order to focus on the key business activities. So that is one circumstance. If a company decides that the company is engaging in many activities, a company can now choose to focus on core strengths by carrying out corporate restructuring, to focus on core strengths, to focus on operational synergy, to focus on operational. The company can decide to want to focus on operational synergy, and also efficient allocation of managerial capabilities and infrastructure. So then, second circumstance is in relation to consolidation and economies of scale by expansion and diversion to exploit extended domestic and global markets. Consolidate. To consolidate is to aggregate. I just say that corporate structuring implies rearranging the business for increased efficiency and profitability. I just said that it is a comprehensive process by which a company can consolidate its business operations and strengthen its position for achieving corporate objective. So one circumstance that under which a company might decide to undergo corporate structuring is consolidation and economies of scale by expansion. Another circumstance could be, the third circumstance could be revival and rehabilitation of sick units. Sick units. Having sick units can be a circumstance under which a company can decide to undergo corporate restructuring. If a company has sick units, then the company may want to revive or to rehabilitate the sick units by adjusting losses of the sick unit with the profits of the healthy units. Number 4, the fourth circumstance is in relation to purchase of raw materials or acquisition of raw materials. Acquisition of raw materials, acquiring constant supply of raw materials. If a company has a need, if the company has a challenge in acquiring raw materials, then the company can carry out reconstruction, can carry out corporate restructuring in order to acquire a constant supply of raw materials and access to scientific research and technological developments. Number 5, the fifth circumstance under which company might decide to undergo corporate structuring is in relation to capital restructuring. If there is need for capital restructuring, the need for capital restructuring. The need for what? Capital restructuring. Now, that is by way of appropriate mix of loan or debt and equity funds in order to reduce the cost of servicing and improve return on capital employed. So the need for capital restructuring can also be a circumstance under which a company might decide to undergo corporate restructuring. So capital restructuring involves coming up with an appropriate mix of debt and equity funds. And the reason why a company would want to do that is so that the weighted average cost of capital can be reduced, so that the return on capital employed is improved. Another circumstance is the need to improve performance. The need to improve performance. Corporate performance. Improve corporate performance in order to bring it to a par with competitors by adopting the radical changes brought by, say, information technology and so on. So the need to improve corporate performance can be a circumstance which under which a company might decide to undergo corporate restructuring. So these are 6 circumstances. Number 1, the need to focus on core strengths, operational synergy, efficient allocation of managerial capabilities, and infrastructure. Then there could also be the need to consolidate, the consolidation and economies of scale by expansion and diversion to exploit extended domestic and global markets. So they need to go global, to extend across the borders, can be a reason why a company can carry out corporate restructuring. Then there is the issue of the sick units. The sick departments, okay? The sick branches. That can be a circumstance under which a company can decide to undergo corporate structuring. And the company can do that by rehabilitation of the sick units, so that the losses of the sick units can be adjusted with the profits of the healthy units. Then there is the need to acquire raw materials. Let me use the word acquire. The need to acquire. The need to acquire raw materials. The need to acquire raw materials is also a circumstance under which a company can undergo corporate restructuring. Constant supply of raw materials. You may find companies struggling to acquire raw materials for manufacturing or conversion of the raw materials into finished products. That can be a very big challenge. So a company can decide to restructure so that it can position itself to have constant supply of raw materials for production purposes. So these are six circumstances. Candidates were expected to give 5. These are 6 to earn 5 marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, any 5 marks. Part C, rights of auditors under the Companies Act, which relate to company meetings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 marks. 5 marks. Then grounds for disqualification from being registered as company secretary. 1, 2, 3, 4 points. 4 grounds, 4 marks. 4 grounds, 4 marks. Then part A, grounds for disqualification of directors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 grounds, 6 marks. 6 grounds, 6 marks. So this is 6 plus 4, 10. 10 plus 5, 15. 15 plus 5, total 20 marks. I've answered April 2022, question number 3. In our next lesson, I'm going to answer question number 4. Try and attempt question number 4 before coming to the next session. I remain truly yours, Philip Sagwa. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.